Hello, everybody. It's Matt Kern again with Convene Communities, and we're here back with Patty Moeller. And Patty, we're going to do Chapter 6 continued because last week we really didn't get through all of it. Such a great discussion. So just talk a little bit about last week and what we did and how we're going to continue it this week.
Right. So last week it was really very powerful. We had quite a discussion about boundaries and what they meant to everybody and how we use them in our lives, maybe how we don't use them correctly. I think the thing that also showed up in my world all week long is people were talking about the fences. They were talking about whether the fences, was a great analogy to have as far as boundaries, whether somebody can be let in, whether the gate can open and swing both ways and let people in or keep people out. So again, I was also reminded that we don't say it enough. This is a book review of Renew and Restore, How to Communicate, Connect, and Celebrate Your Best Life. And the book can be found on Amazon. And we've been taking weekly each chapter and just having a great panel discussion about what we think about the chapter and what it's meant to us. So that's where we are. The conversation was so powerful that we thought we'd bring it back. And plus, we only got in about 3 or 4 pages. So there was so much that was left out that we decided to come back and really give it a shot. So I welcome the panel. If everybody will just say their name and where you're from, we'll get started that way.
Anthony McCauley, North Carolina.
Via Alaska or somewhere today.
Cindy Lemuel, also in North Carolina.
Yeah.
Hey guys, Brandon over here in San Diego, California.
Nice.
Alex Bodney in Austin, Texas.
Great. Welcome to everybody. So is there anything that somebody wants to go back and start talking about? Do we want to start talking about the boundaries? Again, we got really pretty lightly on that. Well, we got deep into the subject, but we didn't get very far. Is there anybody? Matt and I had some great conversations over the week, and maybe that's a good way, Matt, is for you and I to just kind of dive into some of the conversations you and I had over the week about boundaries. And I'm going to start it off with, it's about respect. Not only is it about self-respect, but it's about respecting the people that you're around. Thoughts on that, Matt, because you know some of the conversations we had.
Yeah, I think that, well, first, I think a lot of it has to do where you sit and the boundaries that you set. So one of the things I noticed from last week's conversation is that a lot of people talked about boundaries in different ways.
Yeah.
And where some people like Brandon and I talked about boundaries as it related to kind of where we sit with our jobs and our working and how much we're sitting in this chair. Other people were more personal, talking about relationships and things that they had gone through in life. As the week progressed in some of our conversations, we kind of kept talking about that, of where people sit. And, sometimes we personally want things to happen and maybe they don't happen the way we want them to happen. And so one of the things you and I really talk about a lot is that, sometimes our feelings are not the same as other feelings. They still might be in that place where they care, like they're really, thinking about you, but they're also so caught up in their own situation, their own life, that they have their own boundaries. So, when you talk about fences, you have your fence up here, they have their fence up, and these two fences are side by side. And maybe you're like, going back to what Lindy said last week, maybe your gates don't line up,
Right.
Maybe they half line up and all that. And so it's easy to, look at things and feel like you're getting, because if it's something that you might want, you might, feel like you're getting slighted but it's what we want, right? It's what we care about. And I've had some good conversations this week. I did a podcast on Monday night where I talked about Memorial Day and losing one of my friends. And then after the conversation, one of my crew chiefs from my squadron where we lost the helicopter called and he reminded me, he thought, hey, you guys that were on scene at that mishap, it really affects you guys and hurts you guys more than it hurts us because you were there. Right. And so for us, that's kind of a big thing for the three of us that were right there on the scene when the helicopter crashed into the water.
And your best friend died.
Yeah, and one of my best friends died.
And you had to recover. Yeah.
Yeah. And so it was very interesting to me as the week progressed, and you and I had talked about that, is that I really started thinking, it's where you sit. Sometimes it's where you sit, and your boundaries might not be somebody else's boundaries or somebody else's fences,
So are boundaries different in different arenas for all of you, work versus personal? Is there one that's stronger for all of you? Because I think that's also real important. Some people can be like, yeah, I'm really strong in my boundaries at work. And then somebody is like, no, I have no boundaries at home. So do they ebb and flow for you? Are they stronger, weaker in different places for all of you?
I'll start. I will say that I have learned throughout the course of my military career that I had to build strong boundaries because of the different environments that I was working in, and not just stateside, but even in like for deployment scenarios, when you're deployed and you're away from your family, you're away from your support system, you're away from the people who are, your kind of your place to fall back on in times of struggle or things that you're going through. And I think oftentimes what I have found is that sometimes the term resilience is kind of interchanged or maybe even used in place of creating boundaries, because if someone were to say, oh, we need to get more resilient, that could sometimes be misunderstood as, oh, you need to go beyond your boundaries and become more capable of coping with different situations or processing different feelings and emotions in a different way. So sometimes
is it also putting a boundary, Lindy? I don't mean to interrupt. When you're talking about that, I also see the boundary is a brick wall. That resilience of I've got to be resilient, like I can't let anything in. Is it
exactly?
Okay. I did that.
Exactly. Great analogy and great visual, because that's exactly kind of what how I interpreted that for so many years. And that was a really big struggle to kind of unlearn that, because that wasn't helpful for me. And it didn't help me grow in my own personal life. Not having boundaries, or not knowing and not setting boundaries, or moving from one environment to the next and having the expectation be completely different.
Yeah.
And so kind of going back to your point, home environments, there were less boundaries in terms of emotion and how I protect myself emotionally. And as soon as you walk out the door and you walk into that next environment, that brick wall, I mean, it's like almost instantaneous. That brick wall has to be there. That's the expectation. That's sometimes a perception that could be my perception of the, how I'm supposed to act in a specific environment. Yeah. But it makes it difficult.
Okay. Anyone else?
Anyone?
Yeah, because for me, it's that expectation. I think that's a good word. What we expect of others. Anthony, what were you going to say?
I was saying that boundaries for me is, like you said, is it an ebb and flow, or is it just in between or whatever? But I'm always having to do not always having to, but check in with my feelings type of thing. You said in the book, if you feel angry or resentful, it's a pretty good sign that you need to speak up. Pretty laid back, and I'll let things bottle up and won't say anything, but that's a good time to check in with the boundary thing.
Yeah.
If I need to say, look, we need to talk about what you just said, and later on in the book, I had to stop again at the instead of sayings. I stopped at all those things that you had again, and I'm like stuck in my tracks right there. But yeah, I'm always just making sure that that I'm checking in and not holding. If something someone said has got me stuck or something, instead of me playing it off here, I think my boundary that it's something that I need to talk about. This making sense to you. A check-in type thing without holding resentment, holding things in. getting it, letting them know, hey, wait a minute, we need to talk about that. Or especially with me, you know, because I'll let it build up and it's like a raging bull in a china shop. And, and I don't do that. You know, I've dealt with that a whole lot. So immediately check in with me first.
Right. I like that.
Yeah. So that was in the book as well in chapter 6. So many great nuggets in chapter 6. Even after this series is done, man, I'm gonna still be in chapter 6 for a few more weeks.
Awesome. Yeah.
Alex or Brandon?
I'm good.
You're good. Yeah, and so Anthony, I'm going to go back to you because I do think it's about the expectations, and I like the fact that you kind of tuned in on checking in with yourself, because if there's something being stirred in yourself, that means a boundary's been crossed, and sometimes we just don't even realize that. You know, whether somebody's hurt our feelings spiritually, whether somebody's hurt our feelings with a comment, it is time to go back and check. And we have to check, you know, it goes back to what Matt was talking about. We got to go back and look at our own stuff and see how we got activated. But it is when we stay silent and don't tell somebody that they hurt our feelings, they don't know. More than likely, they don't know. So they're working on a premise that things are fine. And when they're not, and you don't say it, that anxiety and that resentment comes up, and that creates that big chasm that nobody can get back onto and have a conversation. But I'll also go back to, Matt and I talked about this. It also, this boundary goes back to the whole technology conversation that we had. Yeah, Matt.
No, because I was getting ready to bring that up. If you didn't, I was going to talk about it.
So I think it's that whole, I've just seen it all week, either with clients or in my own personal life, when people only check in through technology and really say, well, I think you're doing great because I've seen your posts, or that I've watched the social media. But to hear a voice changes everything. And again, you know, I think I received 2 or 3 texts yesterday that just said, how are you? I don't know even how to really respond to that, because you don't get into that ebb and flow. And it goes back into that whole thing of respect. If somebody knows that you're more a conversationalist or really wants to know how you are, it's still about picking up the phone. I mean, Alex and I'll text back and forth. And you, Alex, come to mind several times. We can text a ton. You know, did you watch the Michael Jordan, The Last Dance? Yeah, it's been great. It's never, though, to do a personal check-in. And it's that very first moment. I was telling Matt the story of when Alex got his first Game Boy. And the rule was, if you can have the Game Boy, as soon as somebody talks to you and you don't hit pause, that thing is gone, because a human being in front of you is far more important than that Game Boy. He was doing awesome. We were standing in the drive one day, and he was doing his thing. He probably didn't even remember this, but he was doing his thing. And somebody walked up and said, hi, Alex. And he went, hi. He just looked up with these big doe eyes and just handed it over. He knew that was it, you know, and it was like because that became for me one of those things that I realized that I really stand on, is that the expectations are high. That I expect people to understand that human beings are far more important, and to be told that my expectations are too high, I'm not going to back down on that. I had a tough time with that last week. I'm being real honest. And yet when I listened to a couple things from Grayson Marshall this morning or yesterday morning, he was talking about the pants below the butt, no belt. And one of the things we have to go back and remember is when I taught in the rehab center, if you showed up with your pants below your butt and no belt, you were sent back, because that's not respecting me as my qualifications or the rest of the people to show up looking decent. If the girls showed up in flannel pants and just a t-shirt and no bra, they were sent back. That's not how you respect yourself. You've lost your own boundary. And so that became a real personal thing for people, and people didn't understand that. But once you get into the fact that, have I ever walked my dog in my flannel jammies? Yes, I have. I've even gone to a neighbor's house when they said, "Hey, it's jammy night, come over." But I wouldn't go to my job in my flannel pants, right? It's about respect, but it's about personal respect. And I think that's the thing that boundaries is so important about, is learning about what's personally, how you respect yourself. And do we lower expectations? I think we've done this in the school system for years, where certain grades and certain things were expected, and we just keep dumbing down the system to make people be able to feel accomplished. And that opened up a whole nother can of worms right there, people. What thoughts on that? That went out of the book.
Jeez, man, you just open up a whole nother can. You just open up stepping all up in my world, Patty. Man.
Kind of did it
Man,
on purpose.
oh man, I have a tough time with this one, teaching and trying to instill values in a young man who think that it's just so cool to do certain things. And man, wow, that's trying to get a young man, or that self-respect and the wise. They feel like I've crossed a boundary when I say, "Hey, you need a belt on, man." That's God, I don't even know how to talk about it, man. Because this takes us out of the book, Patty. So I don't want to do that.
I don't mind you doing that, Anthony. It's about a boundary, and it's about teaching. If somebody shows up with their pants below their butt and wants to work with you or go do a service situation with you, and you go, "Dude, you can't go do that." I mean, you are teaching a boundary, and it is a boundary about respect. I mean, I'll pick on the pants one a little bit, but that came out of the prison system.
Yes.
That came because people weren't allowed to have a belt, and then it became this cool thing. And I tell the young men that I work with, if the girls would tell you, "I'm not dating you with your pants and your butt hanging out," it would end pretty quickly.
Yeah.
But that is a boundary.
And most of the time, my boys, they don't know. But they know when, man, here comes Mr. Anthony, man. Did you get your belt? Because he gonna send you back home. Or if I come by your house and you're like that, I keep driving by. You can't go to programming that day, because number one, you already know the rules.
Right.
They set the rules, not me. My boys all set their own rules, and when they break them, they deal with the consequences. So, yeah.
So rules, boundaries, expectations, are those words interchanged?
I think they can be.
Yeah.
I think they can be. Yes.
No, I think that can be also. I mean, a little bit, but I think, when you get to boundaries, you set your boundaries, but it's based sometimes off the rules and expectations that you set. And your boundaries, maybe have a little bit more flexibility into it. Should maybe not, but sometimes they do. You give and take a little bit more. A rule, you set it out to begin with, right?
Right.
We got to follow the rules, right? And then, as soon as Anthony, for example, as soon as he bends on that, and he says, "Okay, it's okay, we're going to let it happen this time, but next time, then it's very related, but it can get kind of mushy, right? If you don't.
But that's the gate, right, Matt? That can also be the gate at the fence that we all talked about.
Exactly. That's the gate. And that's what it's funny to say, because when I'm sitting there thinking about it, the gate and the fence, there's different type of fences. And you already kind of touched on that. There's different type of fences that, there's the brick wall, the brick fence, but then there's that chain link, that's more flexible and all that. So I was kind of thinking through that when you said that, because, it's one of those things where you have to setting boundaries is so good. Lindy and I have talked about this quite often. And Patty, you and I have talked about it. Like, I'm spending so much time right here, and working and on calls and on Zoom calls. And, I'll have my priority list set out for the day. And then I'll let people start, I'll break that. And, people are in and out all day. And then I look down at my list and I'm like, man, I only did a fourth of what I said I was going to get done because I've been on calls all day, talking to different people and going past it. So again, that's a work boundary. That's different than a personal life boundary. I do
Mhm.
agree with that. We totally have different personal life boundaries that we work through. And you and I have had this conversation multiple times, of your inner circle, your outer circle, and your further outer circle. How do you deal with the boundaries of your different people that you work with, talk with, relate to, and all those different things.
Anyone else? Do you want to guys move into the forgiveness? Because I think that's kind of one of the things that kind of pulls into what Matt was saying with the circles and that type of thing. So I always think that the conversation of forgiveness is such an interesting one. And so one of the questions that I always ask my clients when they're really struggling, one of the things that I had to learn as I struggled with this, I'm going to throw it out there, not giving me the Webster dictionary version, but what is your personal definition of forgiveness? I see some thinking. Anthony just said, I'm done. I can't deal with that question.
He's like, I'm out.
That one's too tough. Just,
hopefully he'll be right back.
I know. I just thought that was perfect timing. Alex.
I think for me, like forgiveness is coming to being able to take a step back, understand why whoever did something wrong to you, trying to view it and understand why they made those actions or said those words or whatever the case may be. And listening to what they have to say, and then being able to, you don't even have to like pretend that it didn't happen. Like forgive and forget. I've always, that was stupid. Like I'll never forget anything anybody does to me. All that is information for me to make future decisions about you or what you're doing. But it's understanding why they did it and trying to just understand who they are and accepting that everybody's different. And, it's funny, we're going through a lot of stuff right now, and there's an individual that I have a mutual connection with a lot of different people, and there's just a lot of misinformation, a lot of misrepresentation, and it's to the point now where nobody's upset about it, nobody gets mad. We're just, when that person speaks, we are like, that's probably not the case, and everybody just moves on. So I think it's intaking the information, trying to understand why it happened, and then coming to a realization and creating a picture as to who or what the expectation is for that person moving forward, and moving on.
Patty, I can relate to this so deeply. I've had, as I'm sure many have in their lives, situations with family and friends that you just don't expect. Maybe something just blows up when it's seemingly like all of a sudden, but in reality, things were building up to kind of come to a boiling point, and we just didn't realize it. And I have had there's so many times I can remember that I beat myself up over not either apologizing for a part that I may have played in something, or being so resentful for not getting an apology from someone I felt. And it is so damaging to my spirit. And what I found is forgiveness for me is, or not forgiving, is fighting the better part of who I am, like fighting against my better self, my best self. And I have to look at it that way if my goal is to continuously grow and develop and build positive relationships. if that is what I value and that's what's important to me, forgiveness has to be a part of that. Otherwise, it's just not going to work.
Yeah. Who's next? Anybody want to talk before I go? Brandon, you want to talk?
Sure.
Guys, my power keeps going off and the internet service is storming really bad. So that's why.
We just thought you didn't like the question, Anthony. So we just figured
No,
you
no,
just
no.
was like, because it was like, what do you think of forgiveness? And you were like, bing. And it was like, okay. So Brandon, what do you add?
Yeah, I'm gonna kind of tie in forgiveness and empathy, and just kind of touching on my personal thought is like I'm a very forgiving person. I don't necessarily hold on to anything. More of the person of like, don't take anything too seriously. It's like, if it's so dramatic, you might potentially hold on to that for a while, but most things in your life, as you can tell, are not that serious. And you just got to kind of learn to move on with your life. And it's really eye-opening with the stuff that we've been going through. Is like,
Yeah.
okay, maybe that one thing that I got really upset about isn't that serious, because a lot of different things are more important in your life that we've kind of realized over the past couple months. And so for me, it's like, don't take anything too seriously where you get that upset about certain things. And it kind of helps me to forgive and forget. But like Alex said, it's not necessarily the forgetting piece, but it's just more or less like, okay, understand you did that. It's fine. The relationship may not be what it was, but you can continue to go on. If you don't forgive, it's kind of hard to continue on with your own life and being happy. And because as you hold on to grudges, it's certainly affecting you mentally. I don't think if you have grudges or you can't forgive anybody, I definitely think it kind of changes your mentality a little bit of where you may not be as happy or somewhere around that nature. So kind of touching on that subject as well.
Yeah.
And to piggyback on what you just said and then what I said earlier, part of my like process is trying to assess, like, was that action or were those words a mistake, or is that a character thing? Like, is that who you are, or was that an accident or a mistake and you screwed up, which we all do, or is that just who you are and that's what's to be expected? And I think that's part of processing. And again, when you come to the realization, like, oh, that's just who that person is, whether it's good, bad, or indifferent, you can kind of accept that and move on and be prepared for it in the future. And so you don't, then the next time they do that, you kind of just like rolls off your back. Like, yeah, it's kind of what I thought you would do.
Yeah. So let me jump in here real quick, because I think this kind of segues into it, and it's perfect for what both of you just said, but all of us have said. But forgiveness releases you from the toxic feelings of anger. Anger drains you physically and mentally, and forgiveness releases you from that. That's from personal experience, right? So this topic here is kind of near and dear to my heart, as far as forgiveness, because I think this can be played out in so many different ways.
Yeah.
And I think if you look at what I do and what Convene is, it's like, listen, everybody, life's not easy, right? We're going to make good decisions. We're going to make bad decisions. People are going to do things to us we don't like, but we're going to do things to people that they don't like. We're going to be in situations that are just not good. And you have to learn how to forgive others, but you also have to learn how to forgive yourself when you get into different situations that aren't so good. And I think Melinda there has it right, because if you hold on to resentment, if you hold on to all that, it can weigh you down. It can mentally and physically and emotionally drain you. You and I had this great conversation. It's been kind of something I talked about this week, is the topic of moral injury. And what is moral injury? Well, in the military, everybody focuses on PTSD. We have PTSD, a PTSD, a PTSD. Well, if you go back to what I was talking about, the mishap from July 9th, 2001, there's a lot of struggle that goes on with that. And part of that is a different way to look at things. And that's, moral injury. A lot of people that, one of the particular crew chiefs that was there that night, he has, survivor's guilt, remorse that because he was supposed to be in the other helicopter that crashed. And so the guy that he switched places with died. So he holds on to it to this day. That was 20 years ago. He holds on to it to this day, of I should have been over there, So it's forgiving himself, right? Until he understands that it wasn't his fault. It just happened. And working through that. So a lot of time people get so caught up in forgiveness, holding on to that part, whether it be towards another person for doing them wrong. You said it right, Alex, is that I can't control everybody. If they do me wrong, I have to understand that, okay, I may have had a part in that, or there could have been something that went wrong, but I can't control their actions. And so do I hold it against them? Do I hold it against myself? Well, how do I take care of that forgiveness? And I think that is so important that you have a way to really kind of look at the situation. I preach this, and I don't preach it. That's the wrong way. I talk about this all the time with my core family. I mean, we do, because people, I've talked about Lainey in the last couple of weeks and some of the stuff that's happened to her. She can hold on to that, or she can move on. She didn't do anything wrong. So it's important. This is an important topic.
Yeah, and I tell everybody, that I come in contact with, if we really do the hard work, we're only 100% in charge of three things. 100%. Our feelings, thoughts, and behaviors. That's it. And that's the same for everybody on this panel. I can't change what you guys do, how you think, what my clients think, what my friends think, how they act. And so when I get talking about this subject, it's easy for me to say, well, I'm only responsible for my own feelings, thoughts, and behaviors. I think for me, and I want to go to Anthony because we didn't hear from you, so I didn't forget about you over there. So what's your take on this, sir?
Well, when you start to fill your life with possibilities, there's no time to wallow in pain or want revenge. With so many things that's going on right now in all over the world, okay? I've had people inbox me, friends of mine from a long time ago. Anthony, why are you taking this positive stand? Why are you not thinking about vengeance when it comes to somebody that doesn't look like you? Why are you surrounding yourself with people of different ethnicities and different races? It's because, number one, I live my life differently and personally walk in forgiveness. That's not me. Yes, the ignorance is so blind. If I stay in that and keep going on social media and looking at different things pertaining to what has happened that I have no control over because of the ignorance of someone else, I will harbor anger and resentment in my heart. I am surrounded around.
Yeah.
That was good.
That's too bad. Yeah.
Hopefully he'll be back. We can let him continue.
Yeah. As soon as he pops in, he's coming.
Okay,
Keep
this
going.
keeps
Yeah.
It keeps happening, man. Okay.
Go on.
And to me, this boundary is like, it doesn't want me to say this, and it keeps cutting.
Come on, internet.
Yes, I don't know. Can you guys hear me?
Yeah, you're back. You're back.
Okay, everything is going haywire. It is really storming really bad. Not in the amounts, but anyway, Patty, my panel, I don't harbor unforgiveness because of the way I live my life today. I have relationships with many, many people. Now you will hear people are going haywire. People are losing their minds right now. The position I'm in my life right now, being surrounded with so many wonderful people of all different national origins, different backgrounds, I can't harbor unforgiveness. For people to stay in a fixed mindset of what's going on and get caught up in what's happening, you will find yourself making some really bad decisions and harboring unforgiveness in your heart. I wasn't raised like that. It's tough because I find myself, if people of other races apologizing to me. You don't owe me no apology. Man, I'm so sorry. Let's do something. You owe me no apology because I'm a black man. You know, that's who I am. It's like, so I can't walk around angry. Whatever your internal fears are, you need to deal with those.
Yeah.
And it's probably from forgiveness. I could go, look, I can keep going, man. But I am in chapter 6 though, when I talk about this, because like I said, when I got to page 89, instead of saying, I'm sorry, instead of saying sorry to keep the peace. So I'm studying that one again, Patty. I've stopped on page 89 and 90. I'll finish up chapter 6 at some point.
Yeah, and I love the fact that you brought the I'm sorry in here. It's, you know, and I'm sorry is one of those words that it just rolls off our tongue. And it really doesn't mean anything. And I've put up slides on my Instagram post, you know, saying I'm sorry without a change of behavior is actually manipulation.
Wow.
I will say that again.
Wow.
I'm sorry without a change of behavior is manipulation. And that, when you think about it, you know, you can tell me you're sorry all day long that you had another affair, that you did drugs again, that you did something. But when your behavior never changes, oh, I'm sorry I left the light on for the umpteenth time, even though that might be minor compared to the other two things I said. If it doesn't change, you're being manipulated. And when people can start to see that, I think that's an important piece for me. Anthony, that registered with you, sir.
Yeah.
It's funny. I don't know.
Down.
Was the I'm sorry piece, was that in chapter 6?
Yes.
It is.
That's all right.
Because that is one of, you know, it's funny how like little things just stick. And like of the whole book, that is one of the things that stuck out to me the absolute most. And I have literally like put into my life on a day-to-day basis. It's like, so many people say I'm sorry so flippantly that I mean you just become numb to the phrase. Like, and you know, I've done it with a couple of different people, and I've literally told them like, I'm not going to apologize for this because I don't mean it. And I could say I'm sorry, but that would mean nothing right now because I'm not going to change what I'm doing, and I'm not. You may disagree with my actions or my behavior, but I'm not apologetic for it. So I'm not going to apologize for it. And then it's funny too, you know, it just becomes such a useless phrase. You know, something went on this week professionally. And when I say 100% not my doing at all, I mean, I had nothing to do with it. And I got on a call with these people. And I was like, hey guys, I'm so sorry about this. And literally, as soon as I said it, I was like, actually, I had nothing to do with it, and I'm not sorry because it's not my fault. So I don't know why I said that, but it's not my fault, so I'm not going to apologize for it. And everybody just kind of laughed. They're like, yeah, you have nothing to apologize about. But it just like vomits out of your mouth. You just become conditioned to apologize.
Yeah.
It's bizarre.
And it's things like, you know, there's it, and I love that you said that. I mean, I see it show up all the time. Showing up at a meeting a few minutes late because traffic is stopped on 95 and I'm in, you know, a parking lot out there, and I go, oh, I'm so sorry. Well, I didn't cause that. You know, Anthony's sitting there in North Carolina and a storm is raging. I'm really sorry I'm cutting out. There's a storm raging. You're not responsible for that storm, right? It just is something that we vomit out of our mouth. I even, a little bit more seriously, we're a little bit laughing, but when somebody says, I'm really sorry that person died, I've totally stopped that because maybe that person was in so much pain that it was a relief to the family members or to that person. So what am I really? I'm really sad. I'm sad that you're experiencing this. So it's learning to change how I start a sentence and about what, like Alex said, what am I sorry about? I didn't have anything to do with this. So it's really taking that extra breath to say, man, that word just rolls off our tongue. women more than men, I've really realized, really do that. We apologize for everything. Oh, I'm sorry the sun is out. Oh, I'm sorry my hair is short. Oh, I'm sorry that dinner's not on time. Well, what were you doing? Well, the baby had to go to the emergency room. Well, then don't apologize. It just rolls off our tongue, left and right. Yeah, great one. That's interesting that you thought that, Alex.
Yeah, that is a good one. I like that.
What else for I'm sorry? Have you guys stopped like Alex did and just realized how much we say I'm sorry for things that we have zero control over? Brandon.
Yeah, I think even before reading this, I would think about it every now and then. I think of work emails. It's very easy to like start off the email with "I'm sorry, I did this," but it's like you just say it for minor things, and I've honestly stopped saying it in emails, like because I would type it, think really I'm not sorry, so I'm not going to say it.
Yeah.
So just backspace and kind of rephrase it. But yeah, similar topic, same meaning as like it just gets overused and it doesn't necessarily have the same meaning when it's used so much. So I tried to not say it as much and really only bring it up when I truly am sorry for something that I caused. But when you think of this, my first thought was work emails. Like it's just overly used in work emails, and try not to utilize that phrase so much.
Yeah, I'll give an example on that. Yeah, yesterday I set a meeting. That was great. I mean, great example is I was going back and forth with a gentleman about setting up a time to talk, and he came back at 3, and I had another meeting already set for 3. And I wrote, I'm sorry, but I have a meeting at 3 with somebody. And I'm like, why am I explaining? I mean, we were going back and forth, and here I am apologizing that I couldn't meet at 3, but I'm saying I'm sorry. And I did the same thing, Brandon. I just backspace and I said, I have another meeting already scheduled at 3. Can we meet at 4? And he came back and he says, perfect. I'll send you a link, you know, but I started out going, I'm sorry, I have another meeting at 3. What am I sorry about? There's nothing to be sorry about, but people apologize, you know, and then you come up with your excuse. I'm sorry. Here's my excuse, you know,
Right.
and you don't need to come up with an excuse, you know, even if it's a true excuse. I mean, but you're explaining it away where that
And
person,
when
he
that-
didn't care.
That goes back to the boundary of being able to say no and have it just mean no without having to explain it away. And that's just a really hard one. Alex's head is bobbing. Did that mean?
My generation it's unbelievable the struggle that people have with saying no. I mean, it drives me. It's probably my biggest pet peeve of kind of like my generation, my friends, is like, hey, do you want to go to such and such at this time? Yeah, I think I might be able to do that. And then you find out that they literally already have plans to do something else at that same time, and they just couldn't find it inside of themselves to say, no, I can't do that. I'm sorry. Like, again, I'm sorry, but no, I can't do that. Like,
Yeah.
That's perfect.
No is a perfectly acceptable answer.
Yeah.
It's actually a lot better of an answer than some wishy-washy, you know, like maybe, which keeps everybody hanging in limbo, and then nobody can make a decision about what needs to take place. Whereas if you would just say no, then I know that you're not going to do that, and I can move on with my own life and make my own decisions. So yeah.
But that's the
whole
point. People have never been
man.
taught, I don't think, how to make their own decisions. And that's a real tough one. When I worked at Hubbard House, my supervisor asked me if I wanted to work the midnight to 7 a.m. shift. No, I had somebody at home to take care of, and no, I don't want to work at night. And so when the question came up, hey, Patty, I asked you yesterday, do you want to do work the midnight shift? I said, no. And I was just starting, and I'll never forget, Kay said, stop. Your answer was no. If I'm an adult, I can accept no, and you said no, and I don't need to know why you don't want to do it. Your answer was no. That's all I needed. And that was the greatest moment for me to know that a healthy person accepts a healthy no. Unhealthy people probably would have argued, oh, but Patty, you could do this, you could do that. And I try to help clients and my friends and family understand, look at the response you get. Like Alex just said, when your friend can't find a no, you kind of know that there's an ego that needs to be built up, that self-esteem needs to be built up, that you don't have the confidence and the trust of others to just stand in your no.
Yep. Go ahead, Brandon.
Yeah, I just kind of wanted to ask a question on, as you were talking, I was kind of rereading the I'm sorry part, but
Sure.
more of a question to you, Patty, is like, can you touch on, I know we mentioned we say sorry too much and it's overly used and it's vomit out of the mouth, but like, why is saying I'm sorry too much a bad thing? Like, can you touch on the why piece of this?
Yeah, and I don't think it's not, I'm going to switch the why because I don't believe it. Whys are, as we've talked about too, are also real judgments. So it's what leads us to do that. We've just gotten in a really bad habit, I think, to be honest, and we've learned to say I'm sorry and to brush things off, and that soothes our soul that we said I'm sorry, and we feel like we're released from that. When the real release comes from taking responsibility. And so until we start teaching the younger people or even anybody that taking responsibility is the true I'm sorry. I didn't mean to hurt you. It's unfortunate that this happened. That was not my intention. I will change that. I promise I will not do that again. I realize that violated a boundary or that hurt your feelings. I won't do it again. But simply going, oh yeah, I'm sorry. That to us is a wound because we know, like Alex and all of you have said, it's a numbing word. It has no value. But when you come from the place of, I accept responsibility that I had this affair, it happened, I want to repair our marriage, and I truly will do everything I can to make you understand that. That to me is somebody that's telling you that's a true apology. Just going, yeah, sorry, won't do that again. Well, that is not repair. So part of the true, genuine apology also comes from, am I doing the repair work, which requires us to have responsibility for the act that was presented?
Got it. Thank you.
Did that answer that?
Yeah, no, I was just curious to get your thoughts on it. We were talking about it, and then just curious to get the why piece or understanding what the relationship was when to use it, when not to use it, and stuff like that. Yeah.
Yeah, I think we just have really gotten into a habit.
Yeah.
No is a complete sentence.
Yeah, with a period. Absolutely.
Yeah. Do you think, I think, and kind of for Alex and Brandon, but too, do you think that, I'm just circling back to an earlier chapter, but you think that this helps with that and that, your generation and even in our generation, but even the younger generation, I find this with my kids, just the lack of face-to-face communication sometimes, and the way you can text back and forth and you're not necessarily hearing that voice or looking somebody eye to eye. I tell my kids, I'm like, here's one of the biggest things you have to learn in life is that if there is a problem, and there's been like multiple problems, like with their school stuff and then orthodontist and all that, it's very easy to get a text or an email saying something's wrong. But when you go and you sit across from somebody at a desk and you're looking at them eye to eye and you work it out, that's different. That's a skill that you have to learn how to do. And sometimes we're so removed. Even this is better than just a text because you're able to see the person's face. You're able to see how they're reacting. But technology can get in the way.
Our generation can't even text no.
Yeah. Well, you're exactly right. Yeah.
What follow that up, Alex? Can you explain a little bit more?
Well,
about
he was
that?
saying like it's easier to let somebody down with your fingers than it is through conversation. People can't even just like say no or I can't through text.
Through text.
It's unbelievable. It's It's crazy.
So I'll
Um,
ask you, where do you think it comes from? From you specifically said, you know, I think my generation's one of the worst. So you're there. So, you know, where do you think that comes from?
I think it comes from not wanting to disappoint people,
Yeah.
and you actually create more disappointment. The one story that I always use, I won't use his name. One of my friends, he and I were playing. It's a silly story. He and I were playing golf at 2 o'clock on one side of town. He had a friend ask him to go out on the boat with him at 3:30 on a totally different side of town. He wrote back, "Man, would love to. I'll keep you posted." I said, "Why in the world would you type that to him? Golf is going to take 4 hours. So it's going to be 6 o'clock by the time you're 30 minutes away from being somewhere that you're supposed to be at 3:30 p.m. Why would you lead him on that there's even a chance that you
Yeah.
might be going on the boat? Like, you're not going on the boat. Just say you can't, you already have plans." And
Interesting.
I mean, I bring it up with him all the time, and he has actually gotten better, but it's just stuff like that all the time where it's like, it's not like Anthony just said, you're not being rude. You're actually being rude by not saying no. You're creating more problem, chaos, whatever, confusion. I don't know where it comes from, but I think it comes from, not wanting to disappoint people. And it's funny, I was having a conversation with another partner of mine, and we've now kind of switched sides of our business. And so we're looking at investing in these different brands, and a lot of them are very young, and they have startup founders and people that are totally invested in, like, this is their life. And we had to have our first breakup call the other day with a brand that we've gone into a diligence process with and decided that we don't want to invest in their brand. And we were both sitting on the phone looking at each other like, this isn't fun, and we got to get really good at this, because 95% of the people that we're going to come in contact with, we have to say no. And it was so corny, but it just came out of my mouth. I used "it's not you, it's us." I said that. And I was like, wow, I am such a cheeseball. Like, I can't believe that I just used that phrase with these people. And, but it's, you just have to be able to, and they respected the fact that we had reasons why it wasn't the right time or the right opportunity. Whereas if you just sit there and kind of like beat around the bush and don't give any feedback and don't say the word no, then they're confused, and they can't make decisions that, they need however much money invested for operating expenses into their business. It's not going to come from us. So if we keep leading them on, all we're doing is putting them in a worse and worse situation the more days that go on. So they actually respect the fact that you come to them and say, hey, this isn't going to happen. You need to move on to other alternatives. So for me, again, to Anthony's point, like, no is actually a really powerful and freeing thing for the other party.
Well, I think it's also freeing, and I think it's empowering when you learn how to say it right. One of the things that I always try to teach my clients, or people that come and take the shift, is how to deal with this. And one of them is you validate the other person first. I really appreciate the fact that you brought us a fabulous product at this time when we're not going to move forward. That's much easier to understand than, like you're saying, leaving them on. But when we learn how to validate somebody first, it lets them relax and accept the no that's coming.
Yep.
And so that to me has been really validating, either for my friends or for business, when I can just say, hey, Lindy, I really appreciate the fact you're jumping on here. We're just not going to need your services next week. That's a no. It's being soft, but it also allows Lindy to kind of sit back and go, oh, at least she was happy I was here. Like, it softens it slightly, but I'm still saying a no. And I'm not responsible for how Lindy reacts to that no. Again, I'm only in charge of my feelings, thoughts, and behaviors, and so is Lindy.
Yeah, here's a good one. I got a comment to read here in a second, but I want to jump on that because this was a horrible conversation, but a great conversation at the same time. So I started a training program for the V-22 Osprey, $28.6 million contract. It was great. I started it. I'm in the driver's seat. A couple of years later, we get a new vice president of DOD operations. He comes in, he sits down with me and he said, Matt, this is your 2-week notice. I was like, wait a minute, how's it 2-week notice? You wouldn't be sitting in that seat if I hadn't started that conversation. Started this contract. You know what he said to me that sunk in, that was great. And it was just open and honest. He said, Matt, this is not personal, it's business. I can hire 2 people for what I'm paying you. And so I'm keeping these 2 people because I have 2 people and you're only one person. And I was like, I can't argue with that. You know, what was I supposed to say? He was open, he was honest, he gave me the true answer. And I was like, okay, good to go. Let's move on because it was valid, but he was honest. He said what was real and I took it in and I moved on. So I like with everything that we're doing, Alex, I appreciate that because you don't want to let people down. That's the human nature in us. But sometimes the truth is just the truth. Hey, we're not moving forward. It's not personal, it's business. And we have our reasons, but we can't partner with everybody. We can't move forward. So Michelle wrote here for my teens, and she has 2 sons. When we go back to what we were talking about, like your story, Alex, you wrote this during that is sometimes with younger generation, it's the fear of missing out or maybe something better will come along. So they keep those doors open, because I might be out playing golf, but man, the boat.
If it rains, I can get on the boat.
Yeah. If it rains, I can get on. So it is the fear of missing out, I think, or something, a better plan might come along, and I see that with my kids all the time, okay, somebody's asking me to do something, but what if this person asked me to do something, so they try to, play the fence or walk both sides of the fence. Boy,
I bet we could do a whole podcast on that because that fear of missing out is really real, especially for the kids and probably for you, Anthony, with your males.
Kids are calling that FOMO these days.
Yes.
Get up with your lingo. There you go.
And I like the JOMO. The joy of missing out too is now the big one. So, and I love the JOMO.
Yeah, that's awesome.
Matt, I'm looking at our time. Are we there?
We're there. We're at an hour. So this is great. I want to thank you guys for coming back for chapter 2. And I want to let everybody know also, I'll go ahead and tease this out there that we are going to be doing the shift, Patty. So why don't you talk about that real quick? It's in the planning phases, but this is something that really focuses on boundaries.
It is. It's called The Shift. It's a program that I've created and with another colleague, Lynn Powell, here in Jacksonville. And we've taught it. We presented it to Jacksonville, had a great coming out. It's a workshop. It's a 3 or 4 day workshop on codependency, on how to set boundaries, on what they look like. It's always come back out of boundaries or boundaries and talking about codependence has usually come out of the addiction world, but it's really everywhere. We've all talked about it. It's generation to generation. It's in work, it's at home. And so it's been my goal to try to bring that to the public. And then when I met Matt, putting it on Convene so people can take this course whenever they want. They don't just have to show up for a workshop. Any one of you could direct them there. They can purchase the program. We'll be putting it out on Convene and people will be able to purchase it. It'll be 22 hours long. It's pretty intensive. It's large. But hopefully we'll meet more of the masses, not just the 25, 30 people, because I think it's out there. I think it's the thing that we're all talking about. And I think it's more important today than ever to be able to have this discussion and to really help people. It's to connect people in a more intimate way. And if we learn how to have boundaries and keep ourselves protected, yet still keep the fence wide open for those to come in, we'll be able to do that. So we're going to take this shift and hopefully get it launched by, I'll put it out there. Matt, you ready? He already has me on the calendar, July 9th. So I'm being held to the fire for this one to get all this taping done. So yeah, there it is.
So it's going to be great. I think, this is the one chapter we had to come back and revisit twice. So we see how important that this topic is. And so this has been wonderful. We could continue to go on this topic, and that's why the shift coming will be a great thing. Again, this is Patty Muller's book. If you haven't ordered it, make sure to get it on Amazon. I
look like I'm hanging in the mountains over there with Anthony. That's awesome.
So thank you very much for joining us. And this will be it for today. And then we'll come back next week and we'll finish it up with gratitude. It's hard to believe
Yeah.
that we're already at gratitude, we're already
Yeah.
towards the end of the book. So it's been wonderful. Thank you all for joining us today.
Yeah, thank you. Thanks for hosting, Matt. Bye, Anthony. Bye,
Anytime.
Alex.
Thanks, everybody.
Brandon.
Thanks, guys. See ya.
Bye, Lindy. Hey,
Hey.
are we live? Oh, I'm the host now.